Hello and welcome to our webinar today, the 2023 Manufacturing Trends for Food and Beverage. Our speaker is having just a little bit of technical difficulties. He is actually on site at a trade show doing a talk a little bit later today. So he's just trying to get to go to webinar. So as soon as he is in, we will go ahead and start the webinar. If you have any questions, please feel free to just put them in the chat and we'll get to them after the presentation. Okay, Jerry is now able to be with us today. So I welcome Jerry Abbey. He is the Market Research and Competitive Intelligence Manager here at Plex. He's the brains behind the State of Smart Manufacturing report. Today, he'll specifically be talking about the 2023 manufacturing trends for food and beverage, data, quality, and technology. So I will go ahead and pass it over to Jerry. Hopefully we can hear you, Jerry.
All right, thank you so much, Rhonda. Am I coming through clear?
Yep, loud and clear.
All right, great. Hello from Montgomery, Alabama. I am on the road this week and just had a little technical difficulty, but I'm very happy to be here with you all today, and thank you for tuning in. We've got some great data, really good insights, and I'm looking forward to sharing everything with our audience. All right, to get started, I'm going to introduce what this report is that we're going to be talking about today. And Rhonda, if you could go to the next slide. So I'll do a quick intro on me. I'm Jerry Abbey, Market Research and Competitive Intelligence Manager here at Rockwell Automation, and I lead the creation of this great report, which has a ton of benchmarking data that we're going to go through and can really help your organization figure out where you are in relation to the wider sphere of food and beverage manufacturers. So what we're looking at here is the cover for this report, and it's a CPG edition. About 40% of the respondents for this, about 82 total food and beverage manufacturers contributed. And if we look on the next slide, we'll see that the report at large was over 1,350 global manufacturers. And I'm going to be talking to those at-large findings, and I'm going to be highlighting the key findings for food and beverage where the data really stood out and trying to think about what takeaways, what do we have to learn there. All right, and going to the next slide here, we're looking at the key differentiator, the key finding that really stood out for the audience at large and for our food and beverage audience. When manufacturers were asked the question, my organization lacks the blank to outpace the competition, technology stood head and shoulders above everything else in terms of the year-over-year change. If you look at the second one on the right-hand side here, you can see that growth in manufacturers feeling that they're behind in technology adoption, in their technology application, in their technology road mapping, and that can have a widespread impact on an organization, both from the practical, the outcomes that are being driven by that technology, and the culture, how people are feeling in terms of their contribution, and how the outlook is looking for that organization. So if we look at the left-hand side here, I listed out the top 5. When you boil it up and really think about it in context, technology influences each and every one of these. Your skilled workforce, there's going to be difficulty in recruiting workforce if your technology house is not in order. Innovation, it's going to be hard to innovate if you aren't digitized and able to access data and understand your data, and bringing product speed to market, speed to response, having an agile enterprise. If your technology house is not in order, it's going to impact and trickle down and affect all of these pieces. When we move on to the next slide, we're going to be looking at a few of the biggest obstacles and the outlook for the industry. And this is really focused on balancing quality and profitable growth. So the pandemic set everybody back to a point where it was just treading to keep your head above water. And now that the pandemic is starting, the impact and the cascading impact from the pandemic is starting to get into the rearview mirror. What we found this year in the global responses for the industries at large and for food and beverage was that organizations are really thinking about how do we drive profitable growth and how do we do it now. And they were looking at these obstacles while thinking about it. So in inflation, supply chain disruption, the shortage of skilled workers, the impact of the workforce. I'm at a conference right now, and that has been a very top of mind thing for all of the manufacturers here. Deploying and integrating new technology is, of course, a challenge for all organizations, and getting organizational buy-in, getting optimal use of that technology, getting people bought into using it. So thinking about that, when we move on to this next slide here, we're looking at what the organization is thinking about in terms of mitigating those risks. And right there in the center, adopting new technology is the #1 response when you're thinking about mitigating external risks and when you're thinking about mitigating internal risks. Top response, bringing technology in to help streamline, build efficiencies, digitize operations, avoid human error, upskill employees to more value-added roles. Technology is first and foremost. And then if we look at the other pieces here, to the left and to the right, these are all the top responses of about 30 total responses, 15 each for external and internal, mitigating that risk. All of these can connect back into how you're approaching technology, managing cybersecurity, digitizing the business, shifting to cloud operations, adopting software. Organizations are saying very loud and clear in this benchmark data that they're looking to technology to drive the organization forward. Now, when you're thinking about driving the organization forward, if we look on this next slide, we see, oh, are we going into a poll here, Rhonda?
Yep, it looks like we are at a poll question.
All right, so before I dig into the context of the next slide, we're going to launch a poll question about workforce.
Oh, hold on, sorry. I'm also having technical difficulties over here. My computer decided to switch screens on me. Hold on one.
Quite all right. I know it by heart, so I'll start reading it out.
Okay.
So the poll question is going to be for, there it is, by increasing your use of technology in the next 12 months, my organization will, are you planning to make no change to staffing, hire fewer workers, hire new workers for different roles, or repurpose existing workers to new or different roles? And I'll just give it a minute for the answers to come in, but I've seen pretty consistent responses. I've used this poll in a few presentations, and for the most part, I'm seeing organizational alignment across industry and really aligned with the data that we're going to show on the slide after this. So go ahead and select your answer, and we'll go ahead and reveal the findings for the poll here. Rhonda, if you want to advance. So are we able to advance to the next slide, Rhonda?
Yep. Am I on? Yep. Can you see? Oh, did it stop sharing my?
If the results came up, I think as the presenter, I am not seeing them.
This is the first time I've done poll questions. I apologize. It looks like we're split. We need to hire fewer workers, hire new workers for different roles, and then the repurpose existing workers is, those were our three. We were split exactly those three responses.
That's great. And if we look at the next slide, that's pretty close to the alignment that we see here. A lot of organizations are looking to technology to upskill their workers and move them into new and different roles so that they can add more value to the organization, and are looking to use software to automate processes where it makes sense, and typically tackling the lowest hanging fruit as they approach it. So looking at things that are repetitive, redundant, and ways that software can step in and take care of automating those processes. And if you look on the far right here, we see the food and beverage breakout. 90% of the respondents for the CPG food and beverage specific report are looking to either maintain or add to their current workforce. And 38% were focused on that repurposing of their existing workers. And 29% expect to hire more workers. And I know different responses for lots of different organizations. And I've talked to organizations that are saying they're struggling to find anyone and couldn't even begin to think about hiring more workers. And there's other organizations that are in a different situation and are looking and feeling ready and seeing workers available and coming in to add to that workforce. And one of the biggest things I'm seeing with these findings and with those conversations with manufacturers around the globe is when you get your technology house in order and things are functioning efficiently and smoothly, it opens up options. So being able to broaden your workforce and tap into remote positions where it makes sense and is doable, because when you move farther down the line and have a cloud SaaS solution where it's eliminated silos and organizations are able to communicate across the business units and function, that takes you a lot farther down the road and starts to increase that need to hire more workers because you've captured that profitable growth and you're moving forward. And for those that are just starting on the digitization journey, that repurposing of existing workers can happen almost immediately. As soon as you start bringing those solutions in, you can see that immediate payback in ROI. Now, if we move on to the next slide, we're looking at some of the obstacles to moving forward. On the left here, we're looking at leadership obstacles. On the right, workforce. Now, looking at these, many of you may be saying, I've seen these before. This is what I would expect. And as someone who's been reviewing these reports and all the data over the last 8 years, I can tell you that one thing really stood out to me on the left side: understanding how to manage next generation workers. We're looking at 10,000 baby boomers a month retiring. And the workers that are filling that gap are a different generation of workforce. And they have different needs, different expectations, different perceptions, and can bring a different approach and value to the organization. But that shift is something to really think about as you move forward on your technology journey, because this next generation of workers are digital natives. If they don't see technology within the organization that they're looking at potentially working for, that becomes a problem. They're looking for screens. They're looking for ways where they can get real-time data, real-time feedback to understand what they're doing, how efficient it is, and how they can improve it. And part of why they're looking at that is to gain a feeling of purpose and feeling like they're contributing. And if you're moving forward with technology adoption, it can really empower those workers and make it that much easier to get them to come to be part of your organization, to stay, and even potentially find other people and recruit them in to join, because they'll feel purpose and they'll share it with those around them. Now, on the right side, I had a great conversation about this piece earlier today: change management. All the other pieces here, I see year after year, they shuffle around. It depends on the economic conditions and the conditions on where you are, in terms of employee retention, engagement, training, difficulty finding employees. But the change management piece is something that every organization can tangibly impact. And I don't know if I need a new word for change management, but I'm definitely trying to push a different approach to defining it, because I think a lot of people, a lot of organizations look at change management and they think, all right, we're going to introduce this program, we're going to roll it out, it's going to do 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, and then, you know what, that'll be it. We'll say we completed our goal and we'll wrap it up, and that's the end of change management. And what I'm finding in all of this data, in all of my conversations across the US, across the globe, across the manufacturing community, is that the leading organizations adopt a change management mentality within and across the organization, so that people are always thinking, how can we improve? How can we make best use of our tools? How can we make best use of our people and processes? And when you have that approach, you're setting your organization up for success today, tomorrow, and every year thereafter, because you're embedding a culture of looking to optimize what you're doing and every piece of what you have at your fingertips with technology. Technology is always changing, and it is so necessary to have that type of approach to keep your organization agile and ahead of the competition. Now, when we move on to this next slide, we're going to be looking at a few more pieces. And before we get to it, we're going to launch another poll about sustainability and your organization. Which of the following best describes your organization's efforts around ESG, environmental, social, and governance, and sustainability? We do not have any policy. We have informal. We have a site-specific program, or company-wide. We'll just give a minute for the responses to come in. Rhonda, when it looks like we're good, if you could share and maybe read out how our responses look today.
Yep, it looks like we have 50% of people have voted. I'll go ahead and close. We'll share here. It looks like the majority of people said we have a formal company-wide ESG policy in place.
All right, so very focused on sustainability and ESG and understanding the impact. That's great to know as we move to the next slide and I talk through this data. So what we found for the survey at large is 95% of organizations had either an informal or a formal policy. And what we're seeing as a driving factor behind those policies is new regulations that are coming into the fold within globally. In Germany, there was a new regulation for supply chain sustainability in January. The EU has launched a few regulations, and the SEC in the United States launched a proposed regulation that'll be coming out. I think it's still uncertain, but they are pushing it through. And whether these regulations are going to impact your organization or not, I think it's important to be aware that they're out there, they're becoming more widespread. They're going to impact the biggest organizations first, and those larger organizations are going to be pushing down on their entire value chain. So if you are anywhere within that, you're going to be impacted, and that is every manufacturer everywhere. If we look at this next slide, we're looking at some of the reasons that the CPG, food and beverage, and household good community picked as reasons, drivers for sustainability and ESG. Number one is a competitive differentiator. They are looking at having the sustainability and ESG policy in place, differentiating them from the competition, and also driving efficiency. This is very different from the results that we found last year, where these business reasons did not come to all the way to the top. And we found building presence in community, addressing potential environmental impact, the desire to do good, had been the number one reasons in last year's survey. But that impact from the regulations and the cascade within the supply chain, the value chain of organizations, manufacturers are seeing that if they are first movers within this space, being very forward with their sustainability and ESG, it's a competitive differentiator. And that isn't just a competitive differentiator to win business. It's also a competitive differentiator when you're looking at your employees and recruiting. The next generation of workers are looking for purpose within their role. And if you are an organization that has these formalized policies and can show that to prospective employees, it can make a world of difference, especially versus one of your competitors that may also be trying to get them, but can't display that purpose that they're looking for. And there's lots of stats out there. One of my favorites is from McKinsey that lists 80% of millennial workers would take $10,000 less for a role with purpose versus one without. Now, if we look at this next slide, we're going to dig into another poll question about technology investment and how much is being prioritized to invest in technology. What percent of your operating budget goes towards technology investment? I'll give a minute here for filling this out. And Rhonda, when it looks like we have the responses in, if you could advance this slide. All right, if you haven't made your selection yet, please go ahead and Rhonda will share the results with us. All right, so it looks like our audience invests heavily. This is actually more than the survey average. So if we go to the next slide, I will reveal the survey average in just a minute. So what we're seeing throughout our survey is there are a ton of technologies out there and manufacturers are feeling ill at ease to make a decision to move forward because they're feeling a little overwhelmed. Technology paralysis is where there's so many choices that people are feeling like they need to put it to next quarter or next year and decide not to make a decision to go forward. Last year, about a quarter of our respondents said that they were feeling this. This year, it was a third. And I can tell you from many different speaking engagements and speaking with many different audiences, this is a really resonant point across industries everywhere with everyone. And I don't know, I liken it to that, like, there's so many different things in life where you feel paralysis because of that overwhelming amount of choice. Netflix, if you're watching TV, you have so many different choices. There's always that top 10. There's always that auto play preview. And half the time when I tune in, I watch an hour of previews and give up because I feel that paralysis. And taking that a millionfold when you're thinking about all the different technologies that could serve manufacturers and trying to make a decision about where to start. Which technology is going to have the biggest impact on my organization? Because when you're spending the average for the survey, 23% of your operating budget, our audience here today is spending over 30%. That is a huge investment that you want to pay off for your organization as soon as possible and in the biggest, best possible way. And when we're thinking more deeply about this technology paralysis and tying back to our earlier slide about competition, 65% more manufacturers say they lack the technology to outpace the competition. Well, if you're feeling that paralysis and you're having that feeling of being behind, what's going to happen when your competition makes that decision to move forward and you're kicking the can down the road for a quarter, a year? It's going to create an exponential differentiator and that constant catching up feeling. Now, if we move on to this next slide here, we'll see the operating budget that I alluded to. So CPG manufacturers, no difference between the food and beverage investment and the household goods. It was 21%, just slightly lower than the survey average of 23. But when thinking about a place to start, I think every manufacturer can agree that quality is important and integral to success. And if we look at the responses of this survey, quality was #1 accelerant for digital transformation. It's #1 area expected to be impacted by artificial intelligence. And it's the #1 outcome from smart manufacturing adoption. Now, when we look to the right here, this is the ROI as ranked by our survey respondents for those who already had adopted parts of smart manufacturing. Process automation and cloud SaaS came right there at the top as having the biggest ROI for investment. So the data here, I think, helps get started on where to invest that operating budget dollars. In the light blue, I want to bring your attention to right there in the middle. Machine learning and artificial intelligence are already having a strong impact when ranking ROI. And part of that is coming out of the growth that I'm seeing in machine learning and AI in our responses this year. 53% of respondents said that they already have or will have by the end of 2023 machine learning, artificial intelligence within their organization. Now, if we move on to the next slide, thinking more about that ROI, process automation, cloud SaaS solutions, we got a lot of data back about how cloud is impacting organizations and improving operations, eliminating silos so that communication is clear and across the business units, and helping with workforce, helping pretty much everywhere. So when asked about planned areas to increase investment, cloud came in at #1 and automation slightly thereafter, and cybersecurity another key one. Organizations, manufacturers are recognizing the need to be prepared for a cybersecurity threat. There's many different reports out there that are listing cybersecurity attacks and cyber attacks and the need for cybersecurity in manufacturing because it's #1 industry for attacks. Something to be thoughtful of as you go forward and are looking to cloud technology. Many SaaS organizations, cloud-based, have an entire security team dedicated to your cybersecurity because they are in the business of keeping your business running smoothly, efficiently, enhancing business continuity, and protecting your interests. If we move forward to the next slide, looking at some of those solutions and a place to get started. So the left side of this chart is those percentages of people that have already adopted these options, and on the right is plan to adopt. What I see when I look at this slide is a path of following modular and composable solutions to build ROI, build payback, and do an incremental adoption, which also gives your entire workforce and organization the chance to get on board with this technology that you're investing in and to really ramp up, understand how it's impacting, and grow with it. And production monitoring, QMS, CMMS there at the bottom, and APM. So those top two are the ones that have been adopted the most. Those bottom two, if you look to the right, are the highest for plan to adoption. That's showing me that manufacturers are recognizing that value with these modular solutions and bringing them in and looking to continue to bring them in and grow along that path. If we move to the next slide here, we're looking at adopting smart manufacturing across CPG. And again, the comparison for food and beverage, there was no difference on these percentages, and looking at production monitoring, quality management systems, supply chain planning. You see ERP all the way at the top there, and I think what we have is a widespread of respondents for this survey, from 10 million to over 10 billion. And those respondents were pretty evenly spread in chunks of 25%. So about 25% of the respondents were over 1 billion, and about 10 to 500 million was 25%. So what I see when I look at that ERP number is organizations that are moving into the digitalization of their organization, and that is the first step. And larger organizations, you're most likely already going to have an ERP, but you're looking for ways to enhance your manufacturing operations, and production monitoring, QMS, MES are great places to start and plug into your ERP and start connecting information across the organization. Now, if we move to the next slide, we'll see more of an impact from smart manufacturing and digital transformation's essential role in quality driving it. So you see there on the left side, on the right side, improving quality ranks as #1 for digital transformation, as I mentioned earlier, but it's also digital transformation so you can keep up with your competitors and meet the needs of rapidly evolving consumer behavior. And when we go back to that sustainability and ESG topic that we looked at earlier, consumers are understanding their buying power and influence and are driving the need for understanding the supply chain. And is it an ethical supply chain? Is it a sustainable? Is it tapped into the circular economy for reuse, repurpose, designing products with a minimal impact to the planet? All of these considerations are beginning to come in, and having your organization digitized is a first step along that path to being able to meet the needs of today and tomorrow. Now, if we look at this next slide, some of the areas where food and beverage is looking to grow and improve. On the left-hand side, we're looking at knowledge of smart manufacturing, and a large contrast here when you're looking at the industry, cross-industry average of 35% versus within CPG, home and personal care leaders identified as extremely familiar with smart manufacturing, while food and beverage leaders, a much lower percent, below a quarter. And some of that is organizations just getting started on their digitalization journey and thinking about where to get started. They might be in that technology paralysis feeling, and it's really good to recognize that and think about where you currently are, where other industries may be, where others in your industry may be going, and to leverage all the findings in this report, which is readily available on our website. And the CPG, food and beverage specific one will be available in, I think, about 2 weeks. So this is a preview of the findings. You're the first audience to see them publicly. And looking at the right side here, the planned investments to mitigate disruption, you see a lot around automation of business processes, supply chain planning to mitigate that interruption, and issues with raw materials, which ranked very highly for obstacles for food and beverage. And of course, using cloud technology for business continuity and for cybersecurity protection. Now, moving on to our next slide. There's barriers to adoption. If it was easy, it would just be the way and everyone would already be doing it, and I would be presenting totally different data here. So acknowledging that cost and expense are a top of mind concern. But looking at the data that we looked at before and thinking about that modular and composable ability to adopt, you can help mitigate that cost and ramp up quickly by starting with a production monitoring that can be implemented in a week or two and giving you payback in just about that time. Or a QMS, which takes about 5 to 8 weeks, getting that up to speed and building payback. There are many options out there that can help your organization quickly and that are also not resource draining. So starting with this incremental adoption also accounts for perhaps you're dealing with a workforce shortage like many manufacturers. So it's less resource intensive and less cost intensive, and a great way to get yourself moving forward. Also, if you're going with these smaller, faster to deploy solutions, it mitigates that lack of knowledge of smart manufacturing, that lack of skill set. And before you get into it, it gives you time to align your business objectives, which we're going to talk about on later slides. Now, if we move to the next one here, we're looking at our last poll question of the day: artificial intelligence and machine learning. Are you currently or planning to use artificial intelligence and machine learning in your operations this year? I'm very interested to see. I feel like we're going to see a lot of yeses based on that technology investment, but we'll see. Rhonda, whenever we have a full enough response, if you could advance the slide, please. All right, so a pretty even split. And that aligns really well with what we found in the survey, because it was about 53% of respondents had machine learning and artificial intelligence already within their organization or planning to within 2023. Now, thinking about those technologies, and all of these technologies, there's data. Unlocking your data, getting at the data that is going to be most meaningful for your organization, and how you can improve your data efficiency. 40% more manufacturers say they lack the ability to use data to make decisions. And when you're thinking about artificial intelligence and machine learning, you need access to the data that's meaningful. You want intelligible data that's accurate and can help predict and help guide your organization to make the right decisions to move forward. And better use of analytics was the #1 way that organizations are looking to drive improvements over the next 5 years, and also looking to increase their automation. And as you digitize, there will be more and more data. So having conversations within the organization about what data is most important and getting it in the dashboards to make it intelligible, to not just have real-time data, but to have real-time insights to take action and to improve your way forward. Now, if we're looking at this next slide, we are winding down the presentation, but still have a few more key findings. The impact of smart manufacturing. So we're talking a lot about smart manufacturing. We talked about the ROI. What have manufacturers identified as being the most helpful result from smart manufacturing? So keeping pace with market transformations, it enables that agility to respond quickly, helps mitigate the risk of COVID-19, the pandemic. It helps with deploying and integrating new technologies. So if you have smart manufacturing in there, you're already slightly to very digitized, making it easier to integrate to machines, making it easier to integrate with suppliers, making it easier to advance the communication of data in your organization and continue to make actionable measures forward. Now, if we look at this next slide, we will see the future of smart manufacturing. So what are some of the pieces to think about beyond just the software? Industrial hardened devices, they are heavily in use today by 42%. Handheld scanners, tablets, these devices have been tested and implemented. The business case is there. Manufacturers are adopting them and using them. Mobile phones, cameras, sensors. If we go down a little bit further, I want to bring your attention to augmented reality, mixed reality, and virtual reality and wearables. While only a quarter of respondents have said they have them in operations today, we're likely going to see a lot of growth around this because it can help with knowledge retention and onboarding of new employees. One of our customers today, and actually for the last several years, has used lenses to produce an augmented reality experience for an employee on day one, to project work instructions at their workstation and show them step by step exactly how to complete the task. This results in a huge impact for the organization in so many ways. To get somebody on day one operating like they've been there for 6 months, showing them exactly what to do also increases your safety standards and quality, because you're not worried about those errors that are going to come with onboarding, or the safety issue that may happen if they're not following directions properly. It can bring a world of change, and I'm seeing a lot of different articles lately about these use cases being built up and being adopted by more and more, moving out of those early adopters, first movers, and into that mid mix of seeing the business case. So something to be aware of there. And on the right side, thinking about artificial intelligence, it's coming, it's already here. And where is it going to be impacting the most? We talked about quality, but it's also going to be impacting automation. It's going to be helping with more accurate forecasting, having a predictive approach to operations and production capacity, and tying into tracking and compliance with sustainability and ESG goals and regulations. So a lot of organizations are thinking about those pieces and already looking to artificial intelligence to potentially help. Now, if we could move to the next slide, Rhonda. So I just went through a ton of data. You may be thinking, that was a lot of data. Where do I get started? And whether you're a technology expert and you have deployed and overseen technology for years and years, or you're a paper-based manufacturer just starting on your digitization journey, these steps were built with all of you in mind as a reminder of the way to make optimal decisions as you spend that operating budget percentage on technology. So really identifying the key people that need to be in the room to make decisions and take action. Building the business case to make sure everybody understands what's the ROI that's expected. What is the payback that you hope to achieve when you bring this new technology in? Then go out and research. What are top rated technologies? And you can look at analyst websites like Quadrant reports and the like, where people have already done a lot of that research for you and identified the leaders, the organizations that are really there and established and have been for a long time and will be for a long time in the future, to help guide your transformation as your organization continues to evolve. And then, of course, you need to design and deploy your solution. What is it going to look like? Does the design fit your needs? What is the timeline to make sure that you're going to stick to it? And if you're not, you can understand why and adapt as you go. And managing change, so introducing that change management, measuring your results, and driving adoption throughout the organization. So having some change leaders, some advocates, some champions that are really dedicated to driving this forward. They can take those metrics and share them throughout the organization so that people are feeling real-time impact, that their work is meaningful, that this change is meaningful, and that it's going to improve their roles and the organization at large, and to help the business grow profitably for years and years to come. And if we go to the next page, we're looking at a more basic checklist that you could print out and put on your desk. If you're just thinking about technology, thinking about conversations, thinking about where your organization's at, it's a nice little desktop piece to have and write on and think about your technology journey. And if we go forward to the next slide, I'd like to offer some time for questions. I really appreciate you bearing with me today. I'm sorry my voice is a bit strained. I have been talking a lot this week. And I really appreciated the opportunity to share this data. I love data. I love going through data. And more than that, I love boiling up that data to deliver some insights and really think about the way this can help benchmark and think about that path forward. in the most optimal way. So thank you, and any questions I am happy to answer.
Yeah, we have a couple questions here. If you do have a question, please feel free to put it in the chat, and I will go ahead and get to it after I ask these first couple questions I have here. The first one is, how do we get started if we're a paper-based operation?
So the biggest thing, I think, is maybe looking at those checklists that we just went through and thinking about what are the pain points that my organization is feeling. What are the pain points in the different business units, the different areas, getting operations to talk to finance, to talk to every other part of the organization, talk to quality, and get to the core of what your issue is. And then think about outcomes. You've identified the problems, what are the outcomes? And then look at the solutions that might help you there. And those modular solutions, especially if you're just getting started, are a great place to start.
Excellent. This other question I actually see quite a lot across all industries. We struggle to find workers, and when we do get people, it seems like sometimes they only stay for a shift or two. How can we attract people, and how do we actually get them to stay with the company?
I think so much of having your technology house in order. So having a clear plan around technology adoption, having screens, getting real-time data, anything that can empower each part of your organization to be able to say, hey, I see a way we can improve this, and to have a clear line to relay that message to people that can help put it in action. And more than anything, if they can put it in action, you're empowering your workforce and making it way better for retention, way better for recruitment, and it's going to lead to organizational success.
All right, good stuff, Jerry. That is all the questions that we have today. You will get a recording of this webinar. If there's anything that you missed, you can always feel free to check out our website or let us know if you have any questions. And thanks again for joining, and thanks, Jerry, for sharing all that information with us.
All right, thank you so much, Rhonda, and thank you for all of our attendees out there. I really appreciate your time.